Hello, San Francisco, and welcome once again to the Angelic Troublemakers. I'm your host, Alan Jones, and on today's program, San Francisco apologizes to Oakland. I believe in the power of an apology, and I, for the last 3 years, have been trying to get San Francisco elected officials to apologize to Oakland. Why? I think San Francisco did Oakland wrong in the Golden State Warriors snatching scheme or whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm excited. And I'm excited because I wrote a letter of an apology to the people of Oakland. I sent it to the mayor, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, and I sent it to the Oakland City Council. And of course, I sent a copy to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, which I know they threw in the garbage. Anyway, uh, then I posted it. I posted it on my website. If you see here, it says open letter, an apology to Oakland. From 97,863 San Franciscans. Well, the proof of that is the fact that my ballot measure last year was an apology to Oakland. And on today's program, I am going to read the entire letter. Bear with me, I have poor reading skills. And in reading this letter, I'll point out a few things. I may say pause, but I'm going to read this entire letter to get to my point. It goes like this. Dear Oakland residents, my name is Alan Jones. I'm a longtime resident of San Francisco since 1960 and a Golden State Warriors fan since 1975. I am sending to the entire population of Oakland a sincere apology on behalf of the San Franciscans who cast nearly 98,000 yes votes in support of the June 5, 2018 San Francisco election measure Proposition I, aka relocation of professional sports teams. The ballot measure was a declaration of policy intended to make it clear San Franciscans are not down with being co-conspirators with its governing body in the ripping off of anyone, let alone our neighbor, Oakland, of its beloved professional basketball team. Unfortunately, 131,000 San Franciscans voted no to apologizing to Oakland for what the evidence suggests was the biggest ripoff of a black community since the beginning of slavery. We are sorry for the actions of our elected officials, those who voted against this apology, and the San Francisco media that successfully worked to keep this apology from reaching the people of Oakland. Now, let me pause for a bit before I continue on. San Francisco print media, mainly the San Francisco Chronicle and the San Francisco Examiner, have all of my attempts to apologize to Oakland for what we did. Of course, they weren't going to publish it. But the fact of the matter is they really went beyond the call of duty to prevent Oakland from receiving an apology. When you consider the fact that 98,000 people agreed with me in voting yes on my ballot measure, which was an apology, you have to think, well, isn't that enough solid evidence that many people were not down with this theft? Well, that's the way I saw it. Now, let's get back to the letter. So, notwithstanding my belief that any professional sports group should be able to go to wherever the owners feel they can make the most of their investment, I draw the line at how any ownership goes about relocating teams. Pause. In other words, there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Back to the letter. The morally reprehensible act by the Joe Lacob ownership group to abandon a black community in Oakland for a new white San Francisco community reeks of racism as much as it smells of the competing foul odor of greed. Highlighted by the failed attempt by the owners to walk out on a public debt of $40 million was brazen and quite nervy. And though an arbitration judge saw right through this attempt to dine and dash, it gives me no comfort to hear both sides of this now resolved dispute acting like no harm, no foul. Pause. There was an arbitration judge ruling in this issue. Why? Because the Golden State Warriors sued to get out of paying their $40 million owed to Oakland and Alameda County for Oracle Arena upgrades, just because they were moving out of Oakland and the debt had not yet been satisfied. And so they sued, and an arbitration judge, way after my ballot measure was filed, looked at the issue and ruled in favor of Oakland. In other words, Oakland won. Or shall I say, Warriors, pay your bill. Back to the letter. The tools used by San Francisco City Hall in this theft from an Oakland community were racism, greed, covetousness, and corruption. This was a classless act by what I still believe to be a world-class city. San Francisco has a $10 billion a year tourism industry versus Oakland's $800 million a year tourism industry. In other words, a world-class city helps its neighbors. It does not help itself to its neighbors' jewels. From the first meeting the late Mayor Ed Lee had with Peter Guber, up to waving on the back of a convertible during an Oakland parade celebration of one of the Warriors' NBA championships, and to this day, I have felt both ashamed and embarrassed for my favorite city. And in defense of the late mayor, I do not believe Ed Lee, a man who did not want to be mayor of San Francisco, acted alone to create, in quotes, a legacy project by theft, especially from a neighboring black community. But an interesting admission by a sitting San Francisco member of the Board of Supervisors confirms for me I am spot on in my criticism that racism played a major role in making Chase Center possible. San Francisco Supervisor Aaron Peskin, trying to justify his obligation, allowing the Oakland Raiders, not objection to allowing Oakland Raiders renting the San Francisco Giants Stadium for one season. In a San Francisco Examiner report, the supervisor admitted, in quotes, "We're done ripping off Oakland," as his reason. But read between the line of this racist statement by Mr. Peskin. The same city that had no problem with taking the Warriors from Oakland fans became unwilling to share with other Oakland sports fans. And the fact that the ownership of the Raiders eventually worked out a deal for the final year in Oakland in no way let San Francisco off the hook for its unneighborly act. San Francisco was able to snatch the Warriors from Oakland because the NBA commissioner Adam Silver allowed this to happen. And the entire league should juxtapose this move with the statements made by former LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling to better get a gauge on its own level of hypocrisy. Now, what I am saying here is the NBA established precedents. It does not tolerate racism. And when Adam Silver, the commissioner a few years ago, got wind of a private conversation between one of the owners of one of the NBA team owners had with his mistress. And in it, there was some racist statements made. And quite frankly, I didn't appreciate the way the NBA commissioner handled the whole situation. But it was obvious he had to do something because he was he was during the playoffs, and the players for the Clippers and the Warriors, because they were playing in a playoff game at the time, they were thinking, well, how are we going to handle this situation of these racist statements? They were basically ready to do a mutiny, or a boycott of the game. And so cooler heads prevailed, or shall I say, I don't know exactly what happened, so I ain't going to say. But they ended up playing the game. But the fact of the matter is it was an embarrassing thing for the league. And so that began the ouster, the forced sale of the Clippers by its owner. So the point that I'm making here is you can see clearly racism that an NBA owner in a private conversation with his mistress said, I don't want you bringing too many blacks to our games. Versus, or juxtapose, snatching a team that has been solidified in a community in Oakland for 47 years, a black community, and getting it to move 17 miles to a white community is not worse, then don't bring too many blacks to the game. You're willing to take from a whole community, but if somebody says don't bring too many black people to the Clippers games, you're more upset with that? No, I don't buy that. Now, the league may have bought it. Why? Because they're profiting off the move from Oakland to San Francisco. And so the issue is when the sale of this team happened, they sold for $2 billion, and not one bit of racism has been erased over this sale. In fact, to follow it up, it made matters worse. If you're going to force somebody to sell their team because you can't handle their racism, and then you turn around and are co-conspirators with a racist act of taking from a black community and giving to a white community, and I see it, you want me to keep my mouth closed? Oh no, that's not how it works here, people. And so San Francisco and its dirty D to take from our neighbors, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. Number one, is this how you treat your neighbor? And that's not how I treat my neighbor. In fact, as I said on the last program, San Francisco taught me to respect. And so part of respect is if you do something wrong, you apologize. If you really, notice that you've done something wrong. Well, that's what I've been trying to do for the last 3 years. And San Francisco, shame on you, both elected leaders, appointed leaders, and business leaders all shut me down. Why? They wanted the Warriors to come to San Francisco. But I want you to know, this letter that I just read to you, I posted on my Medium page as well as on this website, NBAdoesn'tcare.com. And might I say, in 24 hours, I received 1,600 notification that 1,600 people read the letter. Now, I don't know where they were from. My analysis shows that many of them were from Facebook, because I pasted it on, put it up on our Good Neighbor Coalition Facebook page. But evidence shows that many people shared it through email and instant messaging and direct messaging in other forums. And so the issue is this letter is getting around. But the real good news is a sports journalist who has been following closely the move of the Warriors from Oakland to San Francisco and how it affects both communities is writing about the issue. Now, I'm not going to say what sports journalist and what group he's with, but the fact of the matter is we had an interesting conversation yesterday, and he assured me that this letter will not be lost. It will be a part of the story he's going to do on the effects that the Golden State Warriors move to San Francisco from Oakland is going to have on the communities. Now, I'm saying that we need to stay tuned here because when I first began this program, The Angelic Troublemakers, I titled it The Angelic Troublemakers based on a civil rights great by the name of Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin is credited with bringing the 250,000 people together for the March on Washington, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. Now, a little history on that. In January of 1963, they had planned to have a march on Washington. They couldn't get it together. And it was sad because they pushed the one person who they knew who could do it aside and tried to work without him. Why? The man was a homosexual, black man. Well, they came to their senses. And they brought this black man back into the fold. He was one who mentored Dr. Martin Luther King in his nonviolence approach to change. Well, it was Bayard Rustin who came up with the term angelic troublemakers. He had said, we communities need more angelic troublemakers. What is an angelic troublemaker? An angelic troublemaker is one who causes problems without all of the protests and the turning over police cars, burning down buildings, and rioting in the streets and stuff like that, blocking traffic, vandalizing and stuff like that. He's the one who came up with that, and it lines up with my beliefs. So back to the January failed attempt to bring people together for the March on Washington for jobs and whatever. After that failed, they brought him in. And that was a new date set, August 28th, 1963. And in that date, or 27, 28, correct me if you will. Then, Bayard Rustin, he went to work doing what he knew best. And on the day of this historic speech, people from all across the country gathered. And it didn't look like much at the beginning. But what they did was they all gathered. Then it ended up 250,000, mostly black folks, to hear Dr. King and a host of others, including Bayard Rustin, speak. And so I'm saying that this letter is a part of being an angelic troublemaker. I believe in the power of a letter. I believe in the power of an apology. And I'm saying that for me, sitting around trying to get San Francisco City Hall to apologize, knowing good and well they're not going to do it, I just had an epiphany. Send your own letter. Therefore, I sent this letter to Oakland. And based on what I feel I have the right to do, because 97,863 people agreed with me. Now, if you look at the screen here, you'll see Local Measure I, relocation of professional sports teams. This was on the June 2018 ballot in San Francisco. The measure was simply this: shall the city adopt a policy not to encourage professional sports teams from other cities to move to San Francisco and to oppose any sports team ownership group attempting to avoid paying of an outstanding public debt. Now, if you read the 500-word measure, you will discover I don't have an objection to teams moving around. It's the snatching of successful teams is what the measure reads. And the snatching of successful teams should not be done just because owners want to make a bigger buck. They need to consider the communities that they're in. And especially if you're going to move your team, at least pay your bill first. So for San Francisco and its elected leaders and its main media to say we don't have a problem with billionaire owners stiffing communities when they want to move, well, my goodness. You talk about selfishness, greed, covetousness. I mean, there's all kinds of words that could go with that, but I don't use that language. But to see the totals, 130,916 voted no, we're not going to apologize to Oakland. And 97,863 voted yes, we do owe Oakland an apology for the abhorrent conduct from our elected officials. And though this is posted on my various sites, I'm saying, people, it's going to get bigger. Because San Francisco tried to prevent me from apologizing to Oakland. And I know how to make an apology. If you don't want to hear it, that's one thing. But if it's not for your ears, why are you trying to block me? Report the news. And I'm saying that this was newsworthy. And San Francisco media put it down as not newsworthy. Now, if I could just for a brief second, I can't bring it up because I'm just now thinking of this. If I could just for a brief second say, there was a hubbub over a sign at the Golden Gate Bridge parking area. People were up in arms about the depiction of a stick figure that was black and in prison clothes stealing, and the advertisement was basically guard your stuff and a warning. Well, people got so upset. So many people got so upset, they forced the Golden Gate Bridge District to change the sign to make it look more neutral, not to, look like black folks they were depicting. It wasn't 97,863 people who were upset over it. My point, if the news media is going to report on something like that, why would they not want to report on 98,000 people saying, Oakland, we're sorry? This is not right, people. It just isn't right. And I'm not going to stand for it. And so stay tuned, because this apology is growing. And it is out of my respect for myself, my love for the city, and my love for Oakland. So God bless.